The winter had been long, and the mountains wore their snow like a second skin. Pines stood dark against the white, their needles heavy with frost. The cold did not howl. It pressed, steady and constant, like a hand held over the world to keep it still. Beneath one of those pines, an old fir that had fallen years ago and now lay half sunk into the forest floor, a bear slept. His coat was thick, the color of deep earth, with lighter fur around his muzzle. Scar tissue crossed one of his forelegs, a pale ridge of memory left from a summer fight long past. He was large, but not young anymore. His strength was still present, but settled, quiet, the way rivers become slow in late autumn. The fallen fir formed a shelter, its trunk split by lightning long ago, roots reaching upward like frozen fingers. Snow built around it, shaping a cave of white and wood. Inside, the bear's breath moved in slow waves, warm air misting and fading into the cold. The forest knew him, not the way humans know, with words and names, but in the deeper way of seasons, patterns, presence. The bear had walked these slopes for years. He had fished the river at spring thaw, eaten berries in late summer, and climbed stone ridges at dusk to watch storms form over far valleys. His life had not been loud. It had been steady. Outside the shelter, the forest was still, but not empty. A raven perched on a frost-choked branch above the fallen fir. Its feathers glinted with shades of blue and violet in the pale morning light. It watched the entrance to the bear's den, head tilted slightly, one eye shining like polished stone. The raven did not call, it simply observed. Further upslope, a deer moved slowly through the snow, its hooves sinking deep with each step. It was thin, winter-worn, ribs showing faint beneath its coat. Survival in winter meant caution, and the deer paused often to listen, to the forest, to the silence, to the unseen. But there were no hunters here. Not today. Only the forest breathing. Snow shifted from a branch above. It fell with a soft whisper, almost like a sigh. The sound passed through the pines and firs, like a message, though no creature spoke it aloud. The forest was not speaking to the bear. The forest was speaking around him, softly, slowly, as though choosing its tone. For not far from this quiet slope, beyond a ridge and a frozen creek, humans lived at the valley's edge, and the winter had been hard for them as well. Wood was running low, food thinner than it should have been, voices muted inside their homes, and when winter presses long enough, the forest and the village begin to lean toward one another, not with harmony, but with the caution of two worlds, depending on the same cold ground to survive. The bear knew nothing of the village, but the village had begun to speak of the bear. Tracks had been seen near the creek, large, deep, heavy with weight and time. Someone had said the bear was old. Someone else had said hunger would drive it down from the hills before winter finished. Words. Human words. The forest did not use them. It spoke instead in wind through branches, in snow layering over paths, in the slow pulse of life beneath the cold. And today, the forest spoke softly. The raven blinked once. The deer paused and listened. The bear slept, breath deep and steady. But the winter was not finished. And soon, something would move. Something small first, then something larger. The forest, patient as years, already knew. But it did not warn, it simply watched and waited as the bear slept beneath the fallen fir. The village did not look like much from afar. A handful of wooden houses leaned into the slope, their roofs heavy with snow. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin, wavering threads. The river at the base of the valley had frozen in mid-December, turning the world into a landscape of muted whites, grays, and the dark skeletons of bare trees. The cold had been harder this year than most. People stayed inside longer. Voices were quieter. Laughter had grown scarce. Winter had a way of pressing down on the heart as much as the land. In one of the houses near the old mill path, a father and his daughter lived. Her name was Ira. She was 12, narrow-shouldered, long-limbed, with dark hair that always seemed to fall into her eyes. Her clothing was patched more than once, but neat. She was quiet, but not shy. Silence was simply a language she had learned early. Her father, Timofey, was a large man, broad in the chest and slow in his movements. Not from laziness, just the heaviness of a life that had known both joy and cold in equal measure. He was a woodcutter. His hands were scarred, his nails cracked. He smelled of pine resin and smoke, even in summer. That morning he sat near the stove sharpening an old axe. The sound was slow and rhythmic. Stone against metal, stone against metal. Breath pause, Ira sat at the table, sewing a tear in one of her mittens. She worked carefully, tucking each stitch tight. She did not rush. She did not frown. She simply worked. Outside, the wind pressed against the walls. Timofey paused the sharpening. There were tracks near the river yesterday, he said, voice quiet. Large ones. Ira did not look up. The bear, she said. He nodded once. Old one, I think, he continued. He's stayed higher for years. But the winter, he exhaled. It's pushing everything closer. Ira tied the thread, pulled it through, bit the end clean. He's hungry, she said. It was not fear. It was not warning. It was simply fact. Her father watched her for a moment. You speak of him as if you're not afraid. Ira shrugged slightly. Things that are cold and hungry don't frighten me, she said. Only things that are cruel. Timofey did not respond. There was truth in that, and truth can sit heavy in a room. He resumed sharpening. Stone, metal, breath. Around midday, Ira walked to the edge of the village to gather fallen branches for kindling. The wind had calmed, but the air was still sharp enough to sting the skin. The snow creaked under her boots. She followed the trail toward the old birch grove, the one where her mother had once picked mushrooms in spring, humming to herself. Ira used to follow her there, small hand wrapped in larger hand, the world full of soft, green light. Now the birch grove was silent. The snow lay smooth and untouched, except she saw them. Tracks, large, heavy, pressed deep enough to show the full spread of the paw. The bear. She crouched beside them, her mittened hand hovering just above the imprint. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. She could feel the presence in the shape. The bear had passed not long ago. She looked toward the trees. The forest stood quiet, still, watching, not threatening, not welcoming, just present. Iris stood slowly. Her breath came out in a long exhale, drifting toward the trees before disappearing into the cold. She did not call out. She did not run. She simply gathered the fallen branches she had come for and carried them home. The bear slept still beneath the fallen fir. But sleep was beginning to lighten. There are kinds of sleep that rest the body, and there are kinds that hold the world in waiting. The forest shifted. The air changed. Something had begun to stir. Not loudly, just enough for the raven to tilt its head, just enough for the deer to pause mid-step, just enough for a child to feel the world watching her back. The bear's breath deepened. Winter was not over, but winter was beginning to move. The thaw did not come all at once. It came in subtle shifts, water gathering beneath the snow, bark growing darker on trees, the air carrying a faint scent of earth instead of ice. By late afternoon, the sky had warmed enough for the snow to soften underfoot. The forest no longer sounded like glass. It sounded like something breathing. The bear stirred beneath the fallen fir, not fully awake, just rising into that half place where instinct speaks before thought. His muscles twitched, his nostrils flared. He smelled meltwater, wet bark, and the faint musk of deer. But it was another scent that stayed with him. Smoke. Not fire smoke of the forest. Smoke from human homes. He shifted, a slow movement of mass and fur. Snow slid from the fir trunk and landed in a soft heap near his paw. He did not rise yet, but winter sleep was ending. In the valley, Ira walked the same path as the day before, toward the birch grove, toward the quiet place where cold did not feel cruel. The branches she carried yesterday now lay stacked neatly near the firewood pile. Today, she only walked to walk. Her father believed she went to clear her head. She never corrected him. Some things were simpler left unsaid. Her boots sank into the dampening snow, and water seeped darkly around each footprint. The birch trees rose white and slender ahead, their bark peeling in thin ribbons. Ira reached the first tree and rested her palm lightly against it, feeling the faint cold through glove and skin. The forest seemed different today. Not louder, not warmer, just more present. A quiet attention. She stepped forward. The raven was the first to see her. It sat in a cluster of branches overhead, feathers ruffled against the slight wind. Its dark eyes followed her slow walk, studying, not judging, like one animal watching another for the meaning of its movements. When Ira reached the center of the grove, she saw fresh disturbance in the snow. Not tracks, just a softened depression, a place where something large had rested or passed. She did not search further. Looking harder does not reveal more in the forest. Looking quietly does. So she sat. There was a fallen birch trunk near the grove's edge, smooth from weather and time. She brushed a bit of snow away and lowered herself onto it. Her breath rose in steady clouds. The trees did not move. The raven remained still. She did not speak. She did not expect anything to happen. And that is why something did. From behind the old firs, at the edge of her sight, something shifted. Slow, heavy, measured. The bear. Not emerging, just standing, half hidden among the trunks. His coat blended with shadow and bark. His head was lifted slightly, nose testing the air. He smelled her wool, the birch bark she had touched, the faint smoke of her home. She did not move. Her pulse moved fast beneath the stillness, but she held that stillness like something sacred. The bear's breaths came slow and deep. Not hunger, not threat, only presence. Two beings, separated by distance and instinct, yet sharing the same air. The raven watched from above, silent. The forest did not tense, it simply waited. Ira lowered her gaze, not in fear but in respect. No direct stare, no challenge, just being. The bear did not step forward, he did not retreat. He simply existed, and she existed. And for a moment the world knew balance. The kind of balance that cannot be held with hands. Only lived. Snow loosened from a high branch and fell between them, soft and soundless. The bear blinked once, turned, and moved back into the trees, vanishing with the same quiet he had arrived. Not gone. Just elsewhere. Ira exhaled slowly, her breath trembling on the edge of control. Not fear, but something heavier and wider. Something like understanding. She rose. She did not rush home. She carried the moment with her, step by step, like a small flame cupped carefully against the wind. The bear returned to his shelter. The forest returned to stillness. But something inside both had changed. A thread had been seen. Not tied yet, but waiting. And the forest, vast and old, spoke softly still. Spring did not arrive all at once. It loosened winter slowly, as if testing the world's readiness to wake. The river was the first to change. Thin cracks appeared along the ice surface, hairline fractures that caught sunlight like silver threads. Water began to murmur beneath, faint at first, then persistent. The sound was small, but it carried a promise winter could no longer silence. The villagers heard it, not with their ears, but with their bones, the way people who live close to the land feel the world before they understand it. Timofey woke earlier now. He split logs with a steady rhythm, breath heavy in the warming air. He worked harder than the cold required. Sometimes survival is not about weather. Sometimes it is about avoiding thought. Ira stood beside the woodpile, stacking the split logs neatly. She worked without needing instruction. Her movements were light and sure. But her father watched her, in the small moments when she wasn't looking, studying something in her posture he couldn't name. A quietness different from before. Not grief, not numbness. Something else. Something awake. 2 days after the ice first cracked, Timofey walked down to the river to check the trap lines. The snow along the bank was softening into slush. Each step made the earth sound wet and heavy. The air smelled of mud and thawing pine needles. And there, along the mud-soft bank, were tracks. Large, deep, clear. Bare tracks, but not wandering ones. Not searching ones. These tracks moved with purpose. A path, not a meandering. Timofey crouched, hand hovering above the imprint. He had tracked animals all his life. He read this print like a sentence. The bear had been close. Very close. Closer than it should be this early in spring. He followed the line of tracks with his eyes. They led toward the birch grove. His jaw tightened. He stood. He did not rush home. He walked steadily, thoughts heavy and slow. When he reached the house, Ira was inside, kneading dough, sleeves rolled to her elbows, soft flour dusting her hands in the wood table. He watched her for a moment, the way her hands pressed and folded, strong but careful. "Ira," he said. She looked up. "There are bear tracks near the river," he continued. A pause. She did not look surprised. Timofey saw it, a flicker. Small, but unmistakable. "You knew," he said quietly. Ira did not lie. Yes. Not defensive, not ashamed. Just true. Timofey's breath left him in a slow exhale. An old man's sound, though he was not old. "How close?" he asked. Ira wiped her hands on her apron before answering. "Close enough to see him." Her voice was steady, not proud, not careless, just steady. Timofey closed his eyes. There are things a father fears: wolves, fire, cold, illness. But there are few fears sharper than the knowledge that the world outside has touched your child. And your child did not flinch. He sat down slowly. "What did you do?" he asked. "Nothing," Ira replied. "I sat." He watched. Then he left. Silence gathered in the room. Not heavy now, but full. Timofey rubbed a hand across his face. Not anger. Not frustration. Something more complicated. He had spent years teaching her to respect the forest, to see animals not as stories, not as threats, but as lives. And she had learned, perhaps too well. "He is old," Ira said softly. "He does not want to harm. He wants to endure." Her father looked at her, really looked. In her face he saw her mother, not in features, but in understanding. Her mother had spoken to bees, not with words, with stillness. Ira did the same, with the forest. Timofey nodded, slow and quiet. "We will not speak of it to the others," he said, because the village did not see animals as presences. Only danger, need, meat, threat. And decisions born of fear are always sharp. Ira nodded once. Agreement without relief. Just understanding. They returned to their work. Outside, the river cracked louder, and water began to move freely. Under the fallen fir, the bear opened his eyes fully for the first time that year. Not because hunger drove him, not because instinct called, but because somewhere in the forest, something had changed. Not loudly, not suddenly, just enough. The bear rose. The forest watched. A bird, not the raven this time, but a small finch, sang a single thin note. The first bird song since winter began. It was not celebration, it was a beginning. The kind that asks nothing, only that you listen.